Hey everyone, Cynics here, and it's time for our annual look back at yesteryear. So 2020 was a strange year for all of us, and initially I thought, oh, I'm gonna be stuck inside, I'm gonna be super productive, I'm gonna get tons of art done, and like a lot of you probably realized, that didn't quite work out like that. I know that teaching online was draining, and I know for a lot of you, taking classes online is super draining as well. So things didn't quite go as productively as we would have hoped, but nonetheless, we're going to take a look back at some of the art from this year, and a lot of the work that I'll be sharing here is just stuff I did for class demos because teaching was still an integral part of my week-to-week basis of things. And you'll see this is the type of normal stuff I'll do during classes, demonstrating different ways to, say, make character thumbnails, making little poses, and then trying to work away from guidelines, all that kind of stuff, how to iterate, all the things you learn in school. Well, maybe learn in school. I never went to school, but all the things I assume people learn in school and all the things I teach in my classes. And aside from that, I have a bunch of just random doodles because I wasn't doing much finished painting, but I would still open up my Corel Painter and just do some quick mechanical sketches and just various things on a lot of different days. You can see little cars, and this guy's a little too off balance. I don't really like the balance going on here, but just random mech things, forelegs, wheels, vehicles, all that good stuff. Just fun to play around with. Occasionally, getting in there with a little bit of painting, still doing studies once in a while, trying to explore different heightened senses and surreal takes on color and everything. So having a lot of fun with that. Yeah, more of the same. I like some of these weird, almost motorcycle-esque mechs. They're just kind of like motorcycles with legs. I assume they run around and you sit on them. Yeah, there's the guy up there. This is kind of fun. Had a fun page of those and some weird little personality-driven mech stuff going on here. I really want to get really deep into environments. Maybe this year. Maybe this will be the year of environments. We'll see. So thumbnail stuff. I think this is also just class demos. So you can see here, one of the main things I look for in character design is to make sure that the silhouette has a lot of really good peaks and valleys. And by that I mean, getting extreme with how much the legs might come in from the clothing, or just, even like a sleeve of a clothing or something, the cuffs of the pants, just making sure that all of the choices really read in a bold sense from far away. I think that's very important. Anyway, typical creature-y nonsense that I like to do as well. I like to do this exercise of just drawing an interesting, weird shape and then flipping it and mirroring it against some kind of plane to create symmetry. So you can see that in a lot of creature designs I do. They always start as a weird shape and then flipped, add some symmetry. It's a good mental exercise to just process things, flipping them and adding a little bit of a mirroring symmetry to them, and just seeing where it goes and trying to figure it out afterward. Yes, and of course this was the year. Man, it feels like an ancient memory, but 2020 was the year of the Sailor Moon meme. You guys remember that, where everyone was drawing the same Sailor Moon pose? I didn't actually do any of them, but while I was in Med's Discord, they were working on them, so I was sketching along and making dumb ones. Looks like a quick little digital painting environment stuff. It's kind of missing some key aspects of design theory, like focus. Anyway, more little nonsense, quick study ideas. Not study, but quick little speed paint ideas. A lot of my warm-up pages that you've probably seen if you've ever watched me stream kind of look like this. Just weird organic blobs and a lot of potato faces. And that's what I like to do to warm up. It's just fun for me. I enjoy that stuff. I have a lot of these. I probably throw away most of them, but nonetheless, get a good idea of the type of stuff. This is the one that I would probably throw away. But that's a good example of just chaos on the page, getting some stuff done. This was, I believe, some demos on environment design compositions. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, a little bit of environment stuff, a little messy. I mean, once again, I'm not proud of my environment stuff. I feel like that's my biggest weak point. My biggest weak point. But man, nonetheless, won't stop me from trying to teach it, which is never that great. But I still have fun with them. I like them. I really admire environment artists. So someday you'll be mine. Anyway, more faces. Kind of like some of this weird stuff that just comes up. I don't know, just playing around with simple faces and noses and weird shapes and how they fit together. Sometimes they get a little bit too off balance. Like this, this just feels like the weight's not distributed well. But you know, yeah, it's always an experiment. You never know what'll come out of it. This looks like a little spoon man, not the Soundgarden kind, but you know, whatever. Once again, more starts of digital paintings that didn't go anywhere. This is where you really decide if a digital painting will be good or not. So I think it's better to just practice these quick little, you know, idea explorations rather than spending all of your time rendering them out. Jumping ahead, this was of course the year of Anatomy Quick Tips hair, and sadly that's the only Anatomy Quick Tips I did in 2020. So that's kind of a bummer, but hopefully 2021 has at least two, if not three or four or five. One can only hope. So this was some stuff for that. I kind of liked how that hair was looking. Nice floopy, swooshy lines going around. Some good flows in there. Yeah. And of course, some of the paintings I made from it. I think I touched a couple of these up, so maybe you haven't seen them on YouTube. That one's roughly the same as it was in the video, I think. Maybe just a couple little, you know, kind of cleanup things going on. Definitely touched up this one a bit because I didn't like how it looked in the video. So for Instagram, it got touched up just a bit with the hairstyle. A little bit more interesting in my opinion. Yeah, but that was a fun video. I liked that video. I had a lot of fun with it. And I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Anyway, back to the nonsense, typical warm-up pages. Lots of warm-up pages, but warm-ups that didn't actually lead into finished stuff. So that's not really the point of a warm-up. A warm-up's supposed to warm you up so you get some finished stuff going, but I don't know. I was usually just like did the warm-up and then was like, yeah, I'm okay here. Let's just wrap things up for today. So I was definitely having a lot of fun with my highlight shapes, just shapes in general. 2020 was definitely a year for shapes and really focusing in on them, trying to refine my sense of what is an appealing shape. These ones are not appealing. No, these ones are, I don't remember what this is. This might have been around the time of the Chroma Core competition because these look vaguely Nautilus-esque, and that was one of the prompts for Chroma Core. Despite everything else and my lack of productivity, the Chroma Core contest was definitely a highlight of both just community, having fun with people, making fun art. It was just a great time. I'm really happy with how that went. I'm looking forward to the next Chroma Core contest later on in this year. Here's some more just faces. A lot of times once I draw a page of faces, I like to just try to do some speed painting nonsense on top of one of them. Man, this guy's jaw is just drooping right off his face. He's just kind of melting away there. I'm not super impressed with these. Oh yes, and around the same time of the Chroma Core contest, we also had Lightbox Online, which was a, surprisingly really amazing event. It's tricky to transition into just doing it online, but I think it went about as well as you could have hoped. Not my panel though. My panel was a train wreck because my internet died, my computer died, everything died on me. So that was a little bit sad, but nonetheless, I put the video up on YouTube the next day, and no one watched it, but it's a good video. Guys, if you ever want to make some gun props, go watch that video. It's the least popular video I did this year, but I think it was a pretty informative and useful video. It was like a proper lesson condensed down for YouTube. But I did a lot of stuff talking about how to make gun designs, using Visual Library anchor points for like the handle, and then just exploring above that. So I did some warm-ups for that. This might have been the warm-up page before I did the panel. Yeah, I also did some other ones. So you can see I was doing a bunch of them during that week, just like exploring how I was going to do my little talk on it. I don't remember what that was for. That looks like a chicken in there. Might have been for a class. But yeah, I like that method for exploring designs when you get that anchor point and you can just iterate on it. And this was definitely just another in-class demo. So this was about creature design. Obviously, I was talking about how you can take something that exists, like a giraffe, and explore different factors of things to create a new, somewhat new creature. So you can explore things like, mutations, giving it some wild, poofy mane type thing. Or you can just change proportions, make it nice and chonky, maybe the head's smaller and rounder. Kind of looks like a Pokemon at that point. Or you can just combine mutations, proportions, little bits of everything. Just get weird with it. Here you have this little fancy lad sitting on his designer giraffe that maybe his parents had genetically engineered for him, but he's not really feeling it, so, typical. Of course, the weird faces never end, so I have plenty of those. Plenty of things of all sorts. A little bit more with proportions and how to make things flow, but typical class demo type stuff for creature design. Anyway, back to our bodies and faces, typical warm-up. A lot of my warm-ups either consist of, doing the potato faces, random faces, or maybe doing bodies and torsos. Just depends on how I'm feeling. I don't know why, those are always my go-to. It's a nice comfort zone of what to practice, and you'll always just get just a little bit better at. Never a bad time to practice all that stuff. This looks like a continuation of that page. And weird creature half-finished stuff. I'm not really sure what this was for. Looks like the start of some weird design that, went nowhere. There's a lot, that happens a lot, which is fine. They're always just little exploratory steps. Yeah, man, there really is a lot of class stuff in here. This looks like more class stuff, talking about character design, little demos of how to do them with either line or silhouette, a little bit of that stuff. Oh, and then we're already to November because here is the self-portrait from this year. I was a little bit worried going into this year's self-portrait because, like you may have noticed, there's like no paintings going on this year. I was a very unproductive person, being a lazy bones and not getting any paintings done. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be a train wreck. But luckily, I just embraced any previously stored knowledge that was up in my head. All that stuff about shape design and anything I could just lean back on. And I think it actually came out pretty nicely. I was surprised at I was like, oh, okay, that's a relief. I don't completely hate it. It was a fun little outcome. You can see there's all kinds of, little shape design things happening very subtly. A lot of subtle things. A little messy in here. Probably could have made that more interesting. But definitely in the highlight, secondary light, all that stuff, it's a little bit of fun. So, yeah, success. And then closing out the year, because that was pretty much all I did in November, apparently. I started hinting at doing streams again, just getting weird with them. This guy loves his hamburgers, loves his French fries. He's having a great time. And this guy, who I think was just a question that I asked myself during the stream, which was, what would it look like if someone just worked out their chest and shoulders, but somehow managed to never work out their arms, always be skipping arm day, I guess. And this was the answer, something like this. I don't know what's with the burger theme. I don't remember. Maybe that's just because I started adding burgers to everything. This guy doesn't have a burger yet, but maybe he had one at some point. So everything's just burger themed. Yeah, and these are just map crunch studies as well. Well, maybe not the bottom one. That might have just been from imagination. The top things are definitely map crunch oriented. This little McDonald's truck. Oh man, this is much nothing. I don't know what this page is. Let's just all use our most artistic sense of intuition and just pretend that all three of these are just amazing finished renderings. Just pretend. Just pretend that there is a great idea in there if you find it. And that's a good way to impress good artists. Just be loose enough with your designs and your thumbnails and everything so that when you show it to an amazing artist, they will fill in the details. So if these don't look amazing to you, that's just because you're not a good artist. It's not because I'm a bad artist, it's because you're not working hard enough. But anyway, what are these? These look like, I don't know, let's say Mega Man X villains. Okay. And back to just doing faces again. Except this time I added some colors and painted them. But yeah, typical warm-up. Wow, this one's actually blended a little bit. That's better. It's like when you take it from this stage, add some blending, and then there you go. Yeah, those are fun. See, I will go ahead and throw this out there. Basically, all of these recent ones are just from the last week or so, because what I have started doing is streaming again on Twitch on a regular basis. So my little resolution or goal for 2021 is to make at least some piece of art every day. And that might have been because I was feeling guilty about the lack of content once I started compiling things for my 2020 recap, this video, and I decided, oh, there's not a whole lot going on here. How about in 2021, I make something every day? So the goal is to have at least 400 pieces of art at the end of things that I can share with you in the 2021 recap. I kind of like the way this is looking, actually, in hindsight. Sometimes when I'm doing them, they feel really lame and uninteresting, but then I'll look at them like the next week and I'll be like, oh, you know what? That's still a little bit lame and uninteresting, but I kind of like some of the stuff that's going on. Here are a few more stream sketches from the next day. I believe this was an expression challenge, this one down here. But anyway, the new year ended on New Year's Eve with another stream, and there was some good stuff from that. All right, so that's pretty much all of the simple little doodles and art I made over the past year, which isn't much. But, you know, like with the previous year, I do want to quickly go over the 2 worlds that were created in my LCAD class, Laguna College of Art and Design, because I'm really a big fan of world building and creating interesting, fun stories. I can't share a whole bunch of art from them with you because most of that art is, you know, from the students. But I do want to quickly summarize the 2 worlds that we did this year. So, at spring term 2020, we had the theme words of rust and fairy. So, I made this little mood board of some ideas that might work into that. There was the idea of these kind of ancient fairy golems. I guess I can always just read the recap real fast. So many thousand years ago, the world of Oxida, I get it, was filled with the magical beings and ruled by the Fae people. So we gotta have fairies. We've already established some idea of rust and fairy. Humans determined to rule the land for themselves waged a bloody war on the Fae. The cunning humans forged metal armor and weapons of science to tip the scales in their favor. The Fae retaliated in kind by sacrificing much of their magic power to construct 3 terrifying magic golems to strike down all of the humans. So these behemoths constructed of Pharaon, which I believe was like magical fairy iron, Phyron, I don't know, looked like cool mockeries of the metal suits of armor that the humans were famous for. So they basically look like somewhat medieval golem-y magic armors that just are like basically 100 feet tall and killing all the men with their magic powers and whatnot. But yeah, there's a few different ones, and the golems made quick work of humanity. But in a last desperate move, the humans let forth an explosion that shook the world, destroying the Fae and all but wiping out humanity. The thousands of years that passed, humanity rebuilt. All this stuff, civilizations came and went. I guess I didn't have to sum up anything because it's all written here. But something stirred from long ago, and the ancient golems came back, and blah, 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 blah. Yep, and years passed. They basically destroyed the humans again because they didn't know what was going on. You know, they're just ancient golems. But they're rebuilding their fairyland, and humanity is kind of somewhat destroyed again. But there's still some people that are on a mission to save humanity, and etc. etc. I'm not going to go over every single word. It's fine. But that was a fun little world. We had some magic creatures. We had some golems to design. And that's the summary for that spring term. Now, in the fall, we, of course, picked another 2 words. Different class, different world, different set of students and everything. And the words we got stuck with this time were falling and overgrown. And much like I seem to always be implementing, it's another story that involves super future technology or something being thrust upon a super kind of ancient, more Ghibli-esque fantasy land. So in this one, it was all about, I like the setup because there's no like evil involved. And I like stories, like in the last one, there's no one's necessarily evil. It's just kind of different people fighting for different things. So we can take a look at that one real fast. I just have a quick little summation of it, so I guess I can just read this real fast because I like to write the lore. I'm a giant nerd and I like writing dumb stories, even though my writing's not great. I just have fun with it. Bear with me. So it started innocently enough, an advanced civilization traveling the cosmos in search of new planets to terraform. Who knows what happened next? A random anomaly, a technical malfunction. All we know is that their spaceship was destroyed and the debris was left to float endlessly through the void of space and time. That should have been the end of the story, but many millennia later, part of the wreckage would find its way to a small planet in the Vibran quadrant. I don't remember what Vibran was for, but whatever. It was a simple planet of farmers, hunters, peace and balance. Once again, very Ghibli-esque. As fate would have it, it was no regular piece of scrap metal that fell to this planet, however. It was a pair of the most advanced pieces of technology known to this long-forgotten species. Dimensional bioformation seeds, capable of terraforming any inhospitable planet in a matter of days when used properly. Man, I worded that really strangely. Okay, I gotta work on my writing for sure. But anyway, the basic idea is that this future civilization from another planet across the universe was just traveling around, recolonizing on just completely desolate planets. And they had this amazing technology, this little seed that they can probably shoot at planets and it would bioform them in a matter of like days. Anyways, so that thing crashed on this planet and it just kind of malfunctioned a little bit, started triggering all kinds of weird side effects. So a multi-dimensional biodistortion field began to form around the seed. Rampant biological growth and organic transmutation exploded into all nearby areas. This level of dimensional growth can be an amazing sight to behold, but nothing exists without consequences. So while the bioforms spiraled out of control near the seed, the rest of the planet was actually being pulled into biostarvation by this weird shifting biodimensional bull. So basically, it's a little bit inspired by like the weird Akira monster at the end of Akira, where it's this crazy bio growth. But it's kind of implied that this bio growth is also like sucking up the biodiversity and life from the rest of the planet. Because it's not meant to be used like this, it's just malfunctioned. So it's just causing all kinds of chaos. It's also implied that there were 2 seeds and one of them fell to the earth without fully destructing and activating. And that one landed near this other town, and you can see it all here. But those 2 people basically have to take it with them back to this other spot. I don't know. I can't remember all the specific, but trust me, it's thought out. I just can't remember it all. So yeah, those were my LCAD classes for this year. They were fun. Like I said, though, it's tough. It's tough when it's online, so I'm looking forward to the days eventually when things are back to normal. But anyway, I guess that's it for the art side of things. I do want to waste a little bit more of your time. I'm sorry. And you're free to meander away at this point, but I thought it would be fun to just do a little quick look back at some of the interesting kind of media things that happened in 2020. So mainly, I just want to do a best of list for 2020. So let's go real fast. I'll make it snappy. So, best TV shows of 2020. Number 3, I would say The Boys was extremely good. I'm a big fan of Garth Ennis. I really like Preacher. If you never saw Preacher, you might want to check that out. But I think The Boys carries forth this lovely sense of humor and fun and interesting stuff that I tend to like. Number 2 was a huge surprise to me, and that's Queen's Gambit. First of all, I was just staying up late one night. I think it was right after it must have came out. And I was just gonna pop on a random Netflix thing to fall asleep to. I opened up Netflix and it was like, here's something new. This girl has big eyes. I'm gonna watch this pretty girl do things. And by the end of the first episode, I was like, what is this show and why is it so good? And then I quickly opened up Twitter. I'm like, is anyone talking about this? And I think that's a lot of people's experiences with the Queen's Gambit because, man, that show is great. I think my favorite thing about it was at so many points, I thought it was just gonna fall into some horrible cliche of writing and stuff we've seen before. But at every single moment where you're like, oh, I know where this is gonna go. I can see this silly cliche happening. And then it kept like sidestepping it and being like, no, that's not really what the story's about. Okay, what a pleasant surprise. This is a great show. And finally, my number 1 show of 2020 was The Mandalorian, which is the most nerdy basic choice, but I don't care. It's so delightful and fun and just makes you feel happy watching it. Just an enjoyable good time. So I was thoroughly impressed with how they've managed to handle the show through 2 seasons. It's just been a delight. What can I say? I'm a dork. Now, having said that, those are the shows that I watched that were my favorite, but there's a lot of good shows that I haven't got around to watching from 2020 that I'm sure are amazing as well. I haven't watched the newest season of Better Call Saul. I hear it's amazing. I haven't watched How To with John Wilson. I'm sure that's amazing. Nathan Fielder's amazing. I haven't watched Ted Lasso. So there's a lot of shows that I certainly need to watch that I haven't got around to yet. Oh, and even What We Do in the Shadows. I haven't watched the new season of that. Man, I'm missing a lot of stuff. Let's see, what else can we do? Oh, there's movies. We can talk about the best movies of 2020. Except there weren't any, so that's kind of an issue. I'm sure there were some okay movies that came out on various things. Even what I would say was my favorite movie of the year, which was I'm Thinking of Ending Things on Netflix. Even that isn't a movie I would recommend to anyone. Now, I like it because it's a Charlie Kaufman piece and it's very surreal and kind of dreamlike. Kind of in the same way that Mother is by Darren Aronofsky, where it feels like you're in a weird fever dream the entire time you're watching it. Although, while the movie Mother was just a basic, weird adaptation of the Bible, spoilers, it's just the Bible. It's just like if someone took the Bible and made a weird adaptation. This movie was equally weird in the sense that it's just depressing. And I guess any movie that's called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, it's got to be depressing. But it's more of that deep existential kind of malaise and dread that kind of is something indicative of a lot of Charlie Kaufman's movies lately. Actually, maybe just always. Maybe it's just the always theme of his movies. They're kind of enjoyable, but like you watch it and you're like, well, that was really good. But man, life's kind of depressing. So I don't recommend that. But this movie, like a lot of his movies, just kind of makes you walk away from it being like, wow, that was really interesting and smart. But man, with how smart it was, I do feel like ignorance is bliss. That sounds weird. Okay, never mind. You know what? Just go see the movie if you want to. You won't like it though, but it's good. Anyway, oh man, you know what? It's really tough to think of some good movies for 2020. So I think just for this category specifically, let's just go for the worst movies I saw this year. So now I didn't see a lot of potentially the worst movies. You know, you have like the Doolittle movie or Artemis Fowl, whatever people say are the worst movies. But of the movies I did see, there were definitely some stinkers this year. So first of all, Wonder Woman 1984. Now, I will preface this by saying this movie was so bad it's good, in my opinion. Like, there isn't a scene in this movie that you can't laugh at and enjoy. So I'm not going to say this one's like a bad watch. It's just an amazingly terrible movie. I had a great time watching it. There's like so many just weird choices and weird things happening in every scene. So that was an amusingly bad movie. There are other movies such as Mulan, which is the other kind of stinker of the year I want to talk about. But this one's bad for a lot of other reasons. It's not really an enjoyable sense of bad. It's bad in a very boring way. And it's also bad in a very kind of fundamental and actually, I think its worst offense is the message it sends to people is honestly terrible. The quote bad guys in the story are just like a group of tribal people from the outskirts that have been oppressed and kind of destroyed by this giant, massive empire and this kind of cruel emperor. And yet they're made to be the villains for no real reason other than they play evil music when you see them and they give them like eyeliner and stuff. So you know they're evil. They look different than the good people. The good people look very friendly and likable, and the bad people look strange and different. So they're bad, obviously. But no, it just seems so weird and shallow and stupid. So, you know, Mulan is being treated terribly for being a woman by the nice, friendly, happy emperor and the culture of the empire. And that's kind of one of the main beefs of the evil people as well, was that they were treated terribly because one of them was a woman. But nonetheless, no, they're still the evil ones. Don't get it twisted. Don't root for them. It would be weird to root for the underdog. And then the horribly mistreated people sacrifice themselves for Mulan. I'm like, it's so bad and offensive toward young people everywhere. Don't show your kids this movie. It's gonna train them to be horrible, horrible people. It would be like writing a Star Wars movie that was Luke Skywalker's a terrorist. I mean, it's basically true, but whatever. We're not supposed to say it like that. So enough about movies. I will talk about the best games I played, because that's fun, right? Let's go through that. Top 3 games of 2020, according to me. In third place, I'm going to put Animal Crossing. And that may seem weird because it's fallen off a lot. But right at the beginning of the pandemic, Animal Crossing had its moment in the sun, and it was delightful, where everyone could get together, visit each other's islands, and kind of had a nice little happy co-op experience. In second place, I'm gonna say Genshin Impact. I do feel like this is kind of a surprisingly good step forward in predatory gacha games. And this only works well if I preface it by the fact that I think this works really well. It's just a free game. You don't have to spend any money. In fact, I encourage none of you to spend money on Genshin Impact. Enjoy the random characters you might get from their little gacha gambling system and just play it with that limitation. Those weird, like, not knowing what characters you're going to be able to play as compared to your friend is kind of fun. You don't need to have every character. Just kind of make the best out of what you get from it, and there's a lot of good content in it. It's basically like someone else is paying for your good time, and it feels good that someone else is paying for all this awesome stuff, and the developers are happy because they're making more money. So there's that. I'm going to say my number 1 game of 2020. I don't know. This is a lot of nostalgia coming through, but it's Final Fantasy VII Remake. And that's really just because I'm like the biggest Final Fantasy VII nerd that you can imagine. I literally grew up with just an obsession with this game. I printed out a giant GameFAQs, like 500-page walkthrough of the Japanese version of the game before the English version even came out, just so I can like sit with it in my bed and like read through materia combinations and different things about the game. And then when the game finally came out in America, I just played it basically endlessly over and over again. So I was excited, to say the least, for the remake. And it actually exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. Now, have I played it as much since it came out? Not really. I don't think the gameplay has the same replayability in some ways. But what is super interesting to me was that I expected it to be the most boring, like, one-to-one remake story-wise. And when I first started playing it, you'll run into those ghost things, and you'll be like, oh gosh, this is actually worse. I don't like this at all. And then by the end of it, after you've played through the game, you're like, oh, those were actually genius, and I'm a dumb baby. I love the meta commentary, and I love the overall kind of weird twist that they played on the whole thing. Way above my expectations in terms of what the story actually did, and quite a success in terms of gameplay as well. All right, now I am a dumb baby, and there are a lot of honorable mentions that I just didn't get around to playing, but I'm sure are super awesome, and I liked watching people play them. Things like Doom Eternal, Hades, Ori, The Will of the Wisp. I'm sure those 3 games would probably make a top 3 if I had played them. All right, really quickly, I want to mention the best music, in my opinion, of 2020. And that's tricky. I don't want to go through like my favorite songs. If you follow my Spotify playlist, you can see the type of stuff that I was listening to in 2020. But instead, I just want to fully take this moment to spotlight Sue Lee. They just keep putting out songs all the time that are extremely good, and each new song keeps getting stuck in my head. And I'm honestly amazed by that, because I listen to a lot of music. You guys may know from my Twitch streams, I love listening to just all kinds of good music. And I'm frankly surprised that my favorite musician is someone who's doing YouTube videos, but it genuinely is just so good. So I'm extremely looking forward to the future of their music once they start putting out full albums and stuff. Because it captures the vibes that I honestly like a lot in music, which is a lot of kind of indie pop vibes with like interesting, deep lyrics, and it's kind of good moods, good drawing vibes in my opinion. It's like the kind of stuff I love listening to when I'm making art. So just throwing it out there, this is the best new musician of 2020 easily. Sure, there are other good new musicians. You got like Saint Panther, you got like a lot of good stuff. I was really into Poolside in 2020, but I've realized none of them compete. If I had to make my 3 favorite songs, they would all be by Sue Lee, which is why I didn't bother making a list, because we'd have like Sleepy Hollow, Wide Awake, All to Stands, even the Thank You song. Like, those are my 4 favorite songs of the year, and they're all by the same person. And you know what? While I'm on YouTube, I think what would be a fun list is my favorite art YouTube channels of 2020. And I'm going to try to make it so they're like really people that I feel like took things to a new level in 2020. And, there's a lot of people that I just love in terms of art YouTube channels. Obviously, we got people like Ahmed and Marco Bucci and all sorts of people, honestly. But for 2020, the people that, like, in my opinion, like, stood out as both either evolving or just coming onto the scene really strong, I just want to go over those a little bit. So let's do a top 3. I think I'm going to give my 3rd spot to Robot Pencil, actually. Why 2020? Well, in the past, like, half or even more of 2020, he's just been dumping out all of his class demos on YouTube. And I feel like people, look at this. There's like no views on these. What is wrong with you people? These are just like full on demos from his classes and stuff. And there's just tons of them. He's just been dumping out pure quality content. Watch him paint nonstop. I just really wanted to mention this one specifically because I feel like no one's watching these. And I'm like, what? Where are the views on these? Because these are awesome videos. I think in terms of just looking for stuff to watch when you're doing things, I think this is amazing content. My number 2 choice for best art YouTube channel in 2020 is going to be Proco, actually. And once again, you guys are going to be like, Proco has been around forever. Why 2020? What does this have to do with 2020? Well, I'll tell you. In the past, Proco used to do just tons of anatomy videos very regularly, and honestly, I didn't watch that many of them because it wasn't really geared toward my goals in art of doing more design, concept art stuff. But over the past year, and I would say starting near, more in 2019 with the rise of like the Draftsman podcast, and carrying that forth into 2020, I honestly love the content of his channel throughout 2020. Here's a Marco Bucci color video. We got a Steven Zapata video here. We got just so much good stuff. Scott Flanders. Even got Taylor's on there. I like continually surprised by the people I keep seeing pop up on his channel, and I'm like, wow, these are like really fun videos, and there's just tons of them. So I love the way Proko's channel grew in 2020. I love the diversity on there. And that's why it feels like a different channel to me. It feels like it's just evolved into this just awesome collection of really good art content. All right, my number one YouTube art channel for 2020. I'm going to say it's Ethan Becker. Now, maybe that's predictable because I did so many videos and random things with him throughout the year. But honestly, he blew up during the entirety of 2020. Just like, I think he's getting close. He's almost passed me in subscribers, but he really just came on strong, making 2020 more fun with all of his videos. And I just enjoy them. I like what he's doing on his channel. I know some people don't necessarily understand it. He comes off a little bit weird. Some people have trouble understanding his sense of humor. They think he's being like a dick at times. You know, like I said, it doesn't come across the same way to all people. And I think there's a certain version of the way he comes across that has kind of been steering even his expectation of how he should be on the channel. And I think that makes it a little bit weird because people build up like, I think he should be a certain way and he needs to act like it. I like it better when he just, does whatever casual thing he feels like doing any given time. I don't like this idea that he needs to fit into a certain persona. So don't make him uncomfortable. Don't make him try to be a certain thing. Just let him be his comfortable, whether it's joking or not. Just let him be whatever he wants to be. Anyway, a couple quick honorable mentions. I think Boro CG, has been doing a lot of great stuff in 2020. And even Mohammed Agbadi, he's been doing a lot of fun stuff. He kind of took over, I would say, D'Angelo Wallace's role now that D'Angelo Wallace isn't doing art stuff as much. The one thing to watch out for was just like, I really like when he's just being generally like positive and going over fun art, theories and things. I don't want him to slip too far into just the reactionary side of things, even though it gets views and, it's popular. Just try to maintain that kind of more positive vibes and just like, more fun stuff. Sometimes it gets a little too reactionary toward negative things, but anyway, I think he'll be fine. So yeah, that's it. Those are my top YouTube channel things of 2020. All right, I think I should wrap it up with the silly best of lists. I mean, I could keep going over dumb stuff. I can tell you my favorite Gunpla of 2020 design-wise was probably the Messer. Look at that cool chunky boy. But I figure that's probably enough. You guys are probably sick of my opinions. Personally, I think the biggest change for me that happened in 2020 was just like a further evolution of a lot of my views on things, of the world, of the way things are, of the way things they could be, whether they're social, political, whatever you want to say. Obviously, it was a year for contemplating a lot of our views on things and kind of looking back at how we view things and how, whether we like the way we view things or whether we don't. It's weird. I have a weird relationship with politics. I grew up personally as like the first generation of just like annoying internet people. I grew up with AOL chat rooms going to argue about atheism and religion and doing all that stuff when I was 12 years old. And then eventually I became that edgy teenager and started hanging out on like game facts, Lou boards, It's Life, the Universe, and Everything, and just being a little debate lord. A proto-debate lord back before, all the days of the alt-right and Reddits and all the stuff you see these days. It was kind of the early days of that, and I was this little know-it-all who thought I was just smarter than everyone. And wouldn't you know it, my politics at the time were mostly like libertarian, just cringy, like I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm super liberal when it comes to all these things. It's just weird because these days I see that same mentality in basically so many young people going into their 20s and teenage years and all these times. And I'm just like, oh, that's so relatable. Like, I know exactly where that's at. And eventually my skills at like kind of observing things and not taking the easiest logical answer just improved. I credit art to a lot of that because art really taught me to just be more observational, because a lot of that early on stuff, that libertarian, fiscal conservative, it was all based on like making very simple logical arguments. A lot of simple concepts that I had been taught when I was younger. Once again, to go back to Disney movies and Mulan, these ideas that like there are good people and bad people in the world, because I was a big proponent of like simple arguments about, what's fair for a person, and, why should I be responsible for someone else's, bad situation, all that kind of stuff. And then when you get like old enough, you start realizing that like, what? Maybe like fairness isn't the be all end all key to things. Maybe I should just be concentrated on sustainability. And instead of looking at what's fair for like each individual person or generation, I should be thinking more so about like the overall 100-year plan of like all of my actions. Like what's best in 100 years? One problem is that there is a lot of bad takes and horrible arguments on all sides of any issue. So it's always been a lazy solution to just look at the worst of the opposing side and always feel like you're on the side of intelligence, even if you're far from it. I won't try to slip by without invoking the name. The rise of Trump loyalists has really been one of the most disheartening things that I've seen happen in my lifetime. Not because it was surprising, because it was so obvious and simplistic in its approach. I just wanted to assume that not such a wide percentage of people were susceptible to such basic manipulation. Then again, I also know how easy it is to manipulate someone when they're in an emotional state of mind. I had a lot of anger issues when I was young, maybe from being bullied, who knows, but those emotional states make it so easy for manipulation to take hold of you. And as difficult as it is, and it is quite difficult, I continue to try my best to find compassion for these people that have been manipulated and preyed upon. I mean, we all probably have a few close family members that have fallen for Trumpism at some point. They tend to be the people among us that also get sucked into things like multi-level marketing and conspiracy theories. Maybe otherwise great people, just a bit naive at times. But all aspects of our society have played a part in conditioning people to be manipulated. So you gotta remember that even our education system has really poorly prepared people for the predatory practices they may face. Now, having said that, I do have absolutely no sympathy for the people in power that take advantage of others. I wish that there was some level of justice, but know that there will probably never be any in my lifetime, as it's really going to take generations of better education to ever improve anything. And that education isn't even in place yet. So I don't expect much of the leadership in this country or any other country. No matter the political party, the best people in society never really seek out a position of power. But all we can do is just raise the baseline so that even as the worst of us continues to take generational power, maybe the worst of us will at least be a little more tolerable. Personally, I'd rather just have an AI running government affairs. It's never really been a job fit for the human ego anyway. By the way, I'm so tired of living in our like gerontocracy where it's just old people that run things. I don't care if you're left wing, right wing. Like it's just so lame that like all of the leaders of the parties are just like so old. Okay, I know a bunch of you will be upset because I brought up politics, but it's an integral aspect of life, and the way we approach it is very much entwined with how we approach the many conflicting viewpoints in aesthetics and design theory as well. All right. I want to thank you all for watching. You guys are all wonderful people, and keep working on your observational skills because I want the future generations to be smarter than me. I want you guys to teach me something new that I haven't learned about art, about design, about the world, about anything. I rely on future generations to be smarter than the previous generations. It's a core belief in my structure. So keep being great people and keep striving for education. And a quick plug, I have an upcoming class at Brainstorm. Obviously it's online now, so if you're interested in taking online classes, Brainstorm's got, a ton of great classes. But I'll be teaching one on stylized portraiture, which should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and that's coming up pretty soon. So if you're interested in that or any other classes, because like I said, there's a lot of fun classes, just check that out. I'll put a link in the description. So yeah, thank you all so much. And of course, the biggest huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. All right, see you everyone.